Welcome back to another episode of the Patch Podcast. Um, we're not getting anywhere with this Ukraine-Russia thing, so we got a new update now. Just wanted to discuss on it's the stupidest thing. Now we got EU versus the United States. Of course, Trump is going um, after Europeans. So let's get into it.
President Trump declaring in a new interview Ukraine is, quote, losing. Trump's comments to Politico that Russia is in a stronger position came at a key moment in the negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, and as Ukrainian President Zelensky is stating clearly that Ukraine is not willing to concede land to Russia.
If this deal, if Zelensky rejects this deal, like, is there a timeline? Is there a point at which you say,
So remember, this was recently too, because I believe either last week or over the weekend, Trump's son actually even said, his dad is the most unpredictable, and I don't know if he said that Trump should, well, step away from the Ukraine war, but I know that he said that his father has the potential to walk away from the Ukraine war issue. So,
Well,
okay,
he's going to have to get on the ball and start accepting things. When you're losing, because you're losing.
Joining us now is CNN Global Affairs analyst Brett McGurk. Is this a clear sign that Trump is sticking with the U.S. plan that would force Ukraine to give up some territory? He's gone after the president of Ukraine, a couple of times in the last couple of days.
Yeah, Sarah, progress has been made in this negotiation. There's a framework for what the end of the war can look like. But on the key issue of territorial concessions, there has been no progress. And it's kind of an error in diplomacy to keep pressing a matter when you know progress can't be made. And right now, on this issue of territory, things are stuck. The president seems to have in his mind that this territory is going to be taken by Russia in any case, so Ukraine might as well basically sue for peace and take a deal. But we're in the fourth year of this war, and the Russians have not been able to take this territory in the Donbass. It's called the Fortress Belt for.
so that's why I'm a little confused with a lot of this. And I don't know who this guy is, but I mean, essentially, he's kind of right, kind of sort of right. I mean, the Russians have had, you know, I mean, if you look at the last 18 to 24 months, they haven't gotten anywhere. Um, as far as advances, sure, they've gotten a few towns, but nowhere near as the gains that they've gotten from the past. I mean, from the past three, the start of the beginning of the war to 3 years now. Um, but yeah, I mean, what this guy was going to say is that they're essentially, you know, the areas that the Russians want and Trump is willing to give up, Ukraine is essentially fortified, within over a decade. So the region that the Russians can't break is essentially the region has been fortified for ever since Crimea was taken, and so and even parts of Donetsk and parts of Luhansk has been taken by separatists. So this area obviously has been heavily fortified. Trump and Putin essentially just wants to give this area up, which is dangerous because if you gave this heavily fortified area, you're essentially just telling them, hey, you know, backyard is open. Do you know? I got glass windows. Do whatever you want to do.
Ukraine. It's their most defensible territory. They consider it critical to the defense of their country going forward. So I actually think the assumption is the reverse. I think Russia actually cannot take this land without enormous costs and over a period of years. That's according to
Russians doesn't care. I mean, you look at the amount of people that the Russians threw at Bakhmut, at Pokrovsk, at certain of these areas. I mean, it's a bloodshed on both sides, but I mean, Putin just throws bodies at the problem. And as bad as this sounds, the Russians, it's a war of attrition. Who's got, who's just got better, bigger and better, and more. Manning, weaponry, economic supplies, so on and so forth, and even partners, I would say. Um, and of course, the Russians have a 3-to-1 population ratio to Ukraine. So I mean, even if not even, I mean, they just got people to burn. Putin's not gonna care. So
a UK intelligence assessment. But in diplomacy, there's always assumptions you make. The president seems to assume, again, that Russia is going to take this territory militarily, therefore, Ukraine has to concede. I actually think the opposite assumption is right, and therefore, the formula, you put this framework together, the formula on land is freeze where you are now and stop the war, and end the war, which you all want. So this is the key issue of territory. It seems to be stuck. I mean, I think the best play here is to support the Ukrainians through the winter and then in the spring return to the negotiating table. Putin always
so I would be careful with this. I mean, obviously, I don't know who any of these people are. Nor do I support them. You, you, the the elephant is in the room. It's almost you can't avoid it. I mean, look at the people who are in Trump's circle. Okay, for the record, Zelensky's and his cabinets are a joke. The biggest clown show I've ever seen. Um, I mean, you got the energy minister scandal. You got the second right hand Yermak, who forcibly quit, was a joke as well. Um, yeah, I mean everybody in his close circle was is it's not helping. And but you look at Trump, you look at the negotiation side, the delegation from the U.S. side. Um, before Trump, you have never heard of Steve Witkoff. I'm not saying that you need to be a politician to really understand things, or especially foreign policy to understand things like this. I mean, one great example is Biden. I mean, that man has been in office for 40 plus, 50 plus years. Uh, Ever since he can run for office, he's been in office, from the lowest level to the highest level, and it's a joke. Obviously near towards the end of it, I don't know what his policies were, in the beginning and through his middle age years. But all in all is that you don't need to be, you know, you don't need to be someone who lived the life of politicians to, and sometimes it's not even good. It's better that you don't have political background for things like this. But there's a huge but. The people who are in Trump's close circle, obviously these are oligarchs, or these are rich people who kind of take an advantage, who have a close tight knit circle, and you look at, I don't know much about Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, but obviously he has, involvement in this, and then you look on the Russian side. I mean, the Russian foreign minister is not even the one who is doing the negotiation. I mean, you have the Russian, financial advisor, their senior financial advisor, Kryol Dmitriev or something like that, doing all of, essentially doing all of this discussion. And it's weird. For me, it's weird because I'm like, why do you have financial individuals? And that brings me, that makes me think like, okay, maybe this isn't a Ukraine peace effort, if I can say that properly. I'm more leaning towards um, the economic support and the trade deals between the two countries, between US and Russia after the war. Whatever the war happens, it can, it's now and present, but they're discussing on, sure, you can say selling out, but I mean, Europeans isn't doing their part in all of this either. So yeah, in a way, you can say selling out. In a way, it's not the U.S. war, obviously. But the U.S. does have an obligation to uphold its signatory as part of the Budapest Memorandum. And if this is, the U.S. version of upholding their con contra contractual agreement, I don't know if the Ukrainians would ever sign something similar like something similarly again. So okay, so chat said, um, Ian, is this you? I don't know if this is you. Um, I don't think it's necessarily all Ukraine. The EU is also gassing up Ukraine to not succeed. Any tort to not succeed. So the part, a lot of people have said, um, essentially Ukraine had made, we're almost had an agreement with a peace effort, first year, and then Boris Johnson botched that. You're gonna have people say stuff like that. Sure, I'm not gonna disagree with that, because essentially Boris Johnson from UK did essentially kind of jeopardize that, um, but at the same time, as far as you know, potential peace deal and what that look like might be far-fetched. I'm not gonna put anything more to it. Um, but yeah, I think that I wish that Europe has more, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but Europe, essentially Trump is going after Europe. This is what this whole video was about. What was, leaning towards is Trump is saying like, okay, Europe, you need to take the reins on this. And Europe understands that the US can't be there anymore. The US is its American first interest, for whatever that matters, for whatever it's worth. So
He thinks winter advantages him. He tries to break his opponents in the winter. This is the fourth winter. It's a difficult winter for Ukraine, but Putin is not going to pick up this land militarily. And in the spring, there might be another opportunity for diplomacy. But
check
right
something here.
now,
Give me a second. I'm just checking something right now. There we go.
it appears to be very stuck, Sarah.
Yeah, and meantime, the war is ongoing and people are suffering through it there in Ukraine. I do want to ask you about comments that Trump also told Politico when it comes to how he views NATO and whether a message of tough love is being sent to them. Listen.
NATO calls me daddy. I mean, I have a lot to say about it. Look, I raised,
Okay, this is might be controversial. Maybe not. Um, and I'm sure, whoever's watching this probably also paid attention. When you see like the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, when he's making a comment, this guy, I mean, this man understands how Trump works. I mean, he understands how Trump operates because every time he says, Trump is the one that's breaking the deadlock with Russia, and blah blah blah. Sure, he's not wrong. In how Trump is the only one that can get anything moving. Sure, also not wrong. But he has also echoed this I mean, he's a politician, I suppose. And of course, Mark Rutte has, echoed this every time he has, whenever a journalist uh, or a news media outlet asks him a question regarding, potential. And and I think that, that's his go-to answer whenever he says he always uh results in, Trump is the only one that can break the deadlock. We wouldn't be going anywhere. We're still not going anywhere. We're still not going anywhere. So
GDP from 2% to 5%. The 2% they weren't paying and the 5% they are paying. And they're paying it because when we send things over, NATO pays for it, and I assume they give it to Ukraine. But Europe is being destroyed.
here's another, and this is off topic a little bit, but I mean, Trump he came in what recently when it comes to immigrant, started cracking down on immigration for, better of a year. I mean, and then of course he's going after Europeans. I don't, I, I don't know why he's going after Europeans for immigration when, when the United States immigration is already in shambles. Sure, he's trying to make it better. Um, I mean, maybe Europeans are very loudly speaking on the U.S. side of immigration. So I don't know why because immigration doesn't affect the United States when it's involved in Europeans. So I don't know why cares about that. But
I guess I just need to ask you a couple of questions. What do you think he means by Europe is being destroyed and that NATO calls him daddy?
Well, Sarah, look,
it's funny.
America's comparative advantage in the world against countries like China or Russia are allies, our web of alliances, and central to that is Europe and NATO. And yeah, the Europeans are difficult to deal with. It's hard for them to make decisions. Sometimes they act collectively through the EU. That's because of the history of Europe and two world wars. I mean, these are arrangements they've put together. I don't think that unless the president has some aim here, he's trying to get the Europeans to do something
I mean, the United
specific
States are
against tough
not
love. If it's really
nowhere
America kind of walking away from Europe because
nowhere
we
on
don't
the
like
same
where certain
level as
countries'
Europe when
domestic
it comes to
policies are heading,
threats of
I think that's a
Russia,
very dangerous signal, not only
because
for
Europe is
Russia and
landlocked.
Putin, but also for Xi Jinping and China. Who, Xi Jinping and China, he will be making his own calculations about Taiwan, which would be a cataclysmic conflict that we have to do everything we possibly can to deter. And he has said he wants his military to be ready by 2027. So we could be heading into a much more dangerous world here, and we're going to need our allies. We're going to need our allies.
Just for me, I'm just going to put this out there. The only reason why we even cared or bother protecting Taiwan is because of their semiconductor chips. If Taiwan doesn't have, 95% of the world's semiconductor manufacturing, US could care less. US could care less. And at the same time, it would cripple the world. All the better for China. So,
Particularly NATO and the Europeans.
Brett McGurk, you always have great analysis. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking us through all this. Let us now go to Ms. Kira Rudik, who is a member of Ukraine's parliament after hearing all these things. I do want you to listen to Trump's new comments where he talks directly about your president. Here's what he said.
People killed.
If this deal, if Zelensky rejects this deal, is there a timeline? Is there a point at which you say, okay?
Well, he's going to have to get on the ball and start accepting things. When you're losing, because you're losing.
What does it mean to you to hear that During this peace process, the president of
She's
the United
part
States
of the
is attacking
parliament.
your president
So
and European allies, but not Russia or President Putin.
Hello, Sarah, and thank you so much for having me. It is indeed painful because I'm sure it's not only American people who are watching this. There are people fighting at the front line, risking their life for democracy, for Europe, who are hearing such a harsh thing from President of the United States, one of our strongest allies, and it's just simply not true. It tries to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it never will. And really, our answer is to ask President Trump to start pushing
there,
pressure
no one
onto
cares.
Russia and not only on
No
Ukraine.
one
What is
cares
disappointing, what is so painful, that since
because you can say all of these heartfelt whatever in part. I mean, obviously she's got to say stuff like that. She's part of the Ukrainian parliament. She can say all the messages and how Trump is this and that. At the end of the day, it's Trump is really the only one that can make a decision. The only problem is Trump has a bipolar disorder when it comes to this issue, because one day he can, or I should say 1 week, he can be, yeah, Ukraine can regain all this territory back. I don't know what world he lives in. The next day he says, Russia, we give you everything you've asked for. Yeah, here's Ukraine. So yeah, who knows?
he came into the office, he was only pressuring Ukraine for a peace deal that doesn't seem to actually be working and be a workable thing. However, we only hear promises to start putting pressure on Russia. Ukraine is not a problem here, and there is no other nation than Ukrainian that wants this war to end, because it's our people who are being killed every single day and night at the battlefield and in the peaceful cities. However, if we stop fighting, there will be no Ukraine. If Russia stops fighting, there will be no war and there will be actually
That's a
peace.
good point.
And
That's a
how
good
is it
point.
that it's all so reverse? And in the speech, I just really cannot understand and cannot explain it to people in Ukraine. So we just hope that this is just yet one of the tactics that President Trump is known to be using to put pressure on Ukrainian side. However, we do not see any workable deal right now, and we just cannot
You don't
understand.
see, this is what these people don't understand. It's that it's bigger than what these people can really comprehend. Um, I mean, sure, all of this discussion is trying to put the end to the war. The peace negotiation, or the peace plan, I should say, goes way beyond that. It goes on the reconstructing of Ukraine and even into Russia, and splitting profit of the reconstructing. Um, I believe US and Russia was split some kind of profit on the Ukrainian reconstruction process, and how pretty much how everything's going to be divvied up. So this goes way beyond what she is saying, because I mean you're because there's already economic deals and trade deals that 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 dwarfs this peace plan. So I mean, even the frozen Russian assets are a huge, a third of it is going to be used for reconstructing. Another third is going to be used for Ukraine, or for I should say for Russia, US, negotiation and economic bridge, something like that. So.
What is expected from Ukraine, especially in this public space?
Yeah, you say that you cannot see, as far as Ukrainian perspective, cannot see any workable deal right now. I do want to talk about President Zelensky's comments, where he said, look, Ukraine has no legal right constitutionally or internationally to give up any territory. Are there any lawmakers, such as yourself in Ukraine, who say they are willing to give up some territory in order to end the war that Russia started?
Um,
From
yeah, I mean, if you think that this war will end without Ukraine losing land, you're dreaming. You live in La La Land. It's not going to happen. Russia is on the on the up and up. They will take. Uh, I believe they will take all, if not most, of the territories they currently occupy, potentially even more. So
My perspective, I do not know anyone who would do that. However, let's reverse this question. What would be the security guarantee? What would be the guarantee that Russia would not attack us again if they are stopped right now, if we agree to any sort of the deal right now? So we hear only the questions, what would Ukraine give up? And are there territories that we are willing to give up? But we do not hear the most important thing is, okay, so but what would be a way that we would know that this war would not repeat itself? Because right
it's
now,
a good
the
it's a good
only way
question.
we see
It's a
is
good
that
question.
Russia will continue fighting. They may stop for a year or two, wait for the sanctions to be lifted, regroup, rest, and then attack us again. If we learn something since 2014 when they attacked us for the first time, this is their strategy and it did not change at all. So, what we are asking of our allies, like, how is this time going to be different?
It's not going to
Who
be
or what
different.
will make sure that Putin will keep his part of the bargain? And that
It's not going to be it. If the U.S. is involved in this, it would not change. And I'm even willing to say if Europe can't, Europe want to, but Europe can't. Um, I mean, you just look at it's not that the U.S. can't, it's the U.S. doesn't care to. This does not benefit um, the U.S. in any shape or form. Uh, doesn't really, uh, hurt the U.S., I should say, in any way. I mean, obviously, you have a lot of these discussions on what a concrete security guarantee would look like in this case. I would say it definitely it needs the U.S. in spirit, I should say, in spirit, it needs the U.S. to deter the Americans. Um, because realistically speaking, I don't think the United States will. Um, as sad as that sounds, and as everybody wish, Ukrainians especially wish, Europeans wish that that Ukraine that not Ukraine, but the U.S. will come to its aid. Um, yeah, I'm very, very hesitant. Um, and I'm also willing to say, um, if Russia goes to war with NATO, um, I do not think that the U.S. will go and help. Yeah, I don't think that the U.S. will go help because it is not sure. The U.S. signed a contractual agreement, but I can also tell you that there's going to be excuses. They're going to say, well, hey, you have European countries that hasn't met the GDP requirements. Um, you have country that pissed off Russia. Um, you have countries that, the plethora of other reasons that the US can use and say, yeah, because of XYZ, we will not come to its aid. And now you got the I mean, just look at it right now. The Russians are the whole goal is the United States was to uh deter Russia away from China. And not only the Chinese and the Russians alliance grew stronger, it inadvertently has separated or distanced Europe and the US apart. Um, yeah, I'll share some other parts, but all I wanted to say is that the US and Russians' foreign policy should never align. Whenever because when Trump says something and then you have with that Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, said that we think that we think the Americans, this is our vision. That should never happen. Our vision should never align with with Russia.
It's the most complicated question that nobody wants to answer right now. And everybody just wants to pressure Ukraine and see if we are ready to badge here and there. Well,
Well, remember, Trump is really it's his administration, his cabinets are really driving this where it hurts. Um, because not only you know that it's asking what is Ukraine is willing to give up and completely ignoring the security guarantees. It's I mean it's a they're essentially using this and say, well, so Ukraine won't is not willing not willing to give up territories or not willing to come to an agreement. Great. There's it's the Ukraine's fault. It's the Ukrainians' fault for holding this peace deal hostage. So
we did not choose to capitulate in 2022. We are not choosing to capitulate right now. Situation is indeed very hard, but President Trump was wrong saying that we didn't have any cards, and I still believe that we still have some.
I can hear the frustration in your voice as you're hearing these words from the president about your president, about the country. In the meantime, I know that there are people in Ukraine who are experiencing the worst times ever in their lives as the war continues there unabated. Kira Rudik, thank you so much for coming on and discussing this with us.
yeah, I wanted to hit something else here. There's another video that I wanted to watch. Or was it? I think it's this one, DRM.
Here. And every
Let's watch this one. Oh, I just closed it. Okay. Well, give me 1 second.
here. And everybody wants that. Right? Okay.
When Mr. President's putting that bill on the floor, sir.
So this is when he's talking right now. I'm gonna see if I can play this one. Okay.
Any reaction on the fine that was imposed to X by the European
For what?
Union? To X, to the platform X.
Oh, there's a fine for against Elon Musk or something.
The fine that the
Wow, that
European
was
Union
pretty
imposed.
amazing. You're talking about, is that European Union or is it, who did that? European Union or
Yeah,
UK?
the European Commission.
Whoa, that's a nasty one.
Do
I
you
don't
consider it an
know.
attack?
Elon has not called me to ask for help on that one. But no, that's a tough thing. I don't think it's right. No, I don't think it's right. I don't see, how they can do that. No, I'm not. I'll speak about it later. I'm going to get a full report on it. Look, Europe has to be very careful. They're doing a lot of things. We want to keep Europe. Europe is going in some bad directions. It's very bad for the people. We don't want Europe to change so much. They're going in some very bad directions. That was a big thing.
You directed a review of the childhood vaccine schedule, possibly to match what is on par with peer nations in Europe. Would you support ending federal mandates and just making those recommendations for schools?
You're going to have to say it again.
As far as the vaccine making.
Don't really care about that.
But we're going to be reducing it very
You
substantially.
support last night saying you have concerns about them.
I know the percentage of more. I mean, I haven't. I've never.
And would that impact?
The,
Do you support that?
go ahead.
That
Look at it. If I want to make the interest amount of the people love it. Except else,
the court's
it's horrible. U.S. attorney, and it's because I can't count.
I think this all be useless right
Like
now.
you, if they're in your flip side, provision, a lot of great people. We have about 7 U.S. attorneys who are not going to be able to keep their jobs much longer because of the blue slip. Because unless, I think I know why they did that, to protect their ass. Okay, that's why they did that. But it should be done away with. I want to be able to appoint great The most highly educated, the most respected people, they can't keep their jobs because of the blue slips. Terrible. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Let's see if I got another one. There was one. This is the one. Maybe I already hit this one actually. But this is the Trump Jr. and his take. I'll watch that some other time.
A big show of solidarity in Europe amid increasing signs that the US president is tilting.
So essentially, you know, I want to go back to what Zelensky is saying. Zelensky is meeting with all the, with his big three, Keir Starmer, Macron, and Merz. Trying to rally support as usual. Again, it's not going to matter. It's the problem is you can have everybody behind Zelensky when it comes to support like this. But if Trump doesn't want to play ball, nothing's going to move. It's not going to. Nobody's getting anywhere.
Towards Russia in his efforts to end the war. Now, the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is currently in London today, meeting with his European counterparts, the British, French, and Germans as well, and will also head to Brussels to meet NATO and EU leaders. And this after President Donald Trump said Mr. Zelensky hasn't read the US peace plan.
So we've been speaking to President Putin, and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including Zelensky, President Zelensky.
So this is pretty much in the beginning of the. This is essentially was really. I think this was last week, or the week before, where the U.S. and Ukrainian delegation had several discussions already, and I believe 3 in Miami, just right after the U.S. delegation went over to Moscow and had and presented the revised peace plan. So.
And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't.
Right, those comments follow weekend talks in Florida between US and Ukrainian officials with little progress reported, and the unveiling of President Trump's new security strategy critical of Europe, which the Kremlin praised. We've got Clay Sebastian standing by for us live at Downing Street. Clay, good to see you. What have we heard so far in terms of these meetings? And importantly, quite a show of solidarity by the Europeans after those talks in Miami.
It's not going to matter.
Yeah, Eleni, I think that is, at least half of the point here. We saw a lot of sort of warm hugs as they walked into 10 Downing Street. Behind me, the President Zelensky, in particular, receiving a very warm welcome from the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Obviously, the Christmas tree creating a festive mood. But I have to say that does not seem to have been replicated in the room. The press were allowed in very briefly as the 4 leaders sort of sat in a row.
There's a little kitty right there.
Opening statements, and I think a couple of them
maybe it's a Russian spy
cat. A pretty bleak mood. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer saying, look, we stand with Ukraine in the pursuit of a just and lasting settlement if we get that far, which I think is a tone that we haven't really heard from him before. And then Chancellor Merz of Germany came out perhaps even stronger, saying that he was skeptical of some of the details coming out in documents from the US side. So I think that sort of let slip a very tense mood, a very nervous mood. Europe, of course, has been sidelined from these talks over the last 2.5 weeks that have involved on one track the US and Ukraine, and on the other track the US and Russia. So the point, I think, of today is that the Ukrainian team is going to brief the Europeans on what's happened so far from their perspective. We did see Rustem Umerov, the lead negotiator on the Ukrainian side, walk in behind President Zelensky. So they are going to get essentially the finer details of what's been discussed so far. Concretely, is anything going to come out of today? It's not clear at this point. Obviously, the Europeans are being expected by the US to stump up security guarantees for any post-war settlement. There's a big debate raging in Europe now about how to fund Ukraine through next year, especially when it comes to those frozen Russian assets, most of which are parked in Europe. So those are concrete details.
Brussels is pretty.
But overall, I think this is a chance for Europe
pretty
to show
against
its ability to try to strengthen Ukraine as it's getting pressure not only from Russia, of course, but from the US president,
Ukraine.
as you showed there, and to try
I think
and show its
Brussels
solidarity
has
as
a
well,
third
of course, to get the update on what's happened in those talks.
of like
Elena.
350+ billion.
All right, Kay Sebastian, thank you so much for that update. Now another story we're following.
CNN's Elena Treen live at the White House for us this morning with the very latest. What's going to happen now today?
Well, look, I think the president and this administration are definitely keeping a close eye on these meetings that Zelensky is having in London, as you mentioned, with the leaders of France, Germany, and Britain. It really is a show of solidarity, as we're hearing from the U.S. and specifically from the president
Show of
himself,
solidarity for
kind
the
of
last 4
casting
years.
some skepticism over where things stand in this negotiation process on talks between Russia and Ukraine to try and end this war. I want you to listen to what President Trump told reporters yesterday, kind of raising criticism and pressure on Zelensky around this plan. Listen.
I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia's...
I don't know where he got that from. I don't know why he would say Zelensky's people love it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure the delegation already, relayed the message back to Zelensky. It's weird. I don't know why he's disappointed that Zelensky didn't. So
Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it. But Russia is, I believe, fine with it. But I'm not sure that Zelensky is fine with it. His people love it. But he hasn't read it.
Now, Kate, for those who have maybe not been following these talks as closely as I have, I mean, this is like whiplash. At one moment you hear President Trump praising Zelensky, seeming to favor the Ukrainian position as he approaches talks. In another breath, though, he'll discuss Russian President Vladimir Putin more warmly. And this is kind of where we are now. It's a very hot and cold posture that he has been taking. Part of that, from my conversations with White House officials, is the president trying to ramp up pressure on the sides that he believes kind of needs goading into this deal. But all of this comes, I think the important context of this is, of course, where the talks stand now. There were talks in Miami on Thursday between the president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff,
maybe
as well
more.
as his son-in-law, Jared
Actually,
Kushner,
I take that
meeting
back.
with Ukrainian...
There's definitely some. There's definitely some, movements when it comes to. I don't even know if it's peace talks, but there's definitely movements in the negotiation table. I just think that it's probably more, how much economic and trade deal the U.S. and Russia are gonna get out of it, and how much they're willing to, throw the Ukrainians in the under the bus.
Officials. They met for hours, Kate, and really at that moment is when we saw talks really begin to stall. And that's over a number of things, including Ukraine, this idea of Ukraine surrendering key territories in the Donbas region to Russia, this idea of security guarantees, this idea of Ukraine potentially committing to not joining NATO in the future. All of those are the remaining sticking points that we are continuing to watch.
And those are like
that's
the big
part of
three.
why we're hearing the president kind of weigh in with some criticism now. We'll see where it all leads. Kate?
Yeah, or doesn't, because it seems that it's definitely seems to
true.
not be moving in the moment, but critical day nonetheless. It's great to see you, Elena. Thank you. Sarah.
All right, to discuss many different things, including Ukraine, Democratic Congressman from Texas, Lloyd Doggett, is joining me now. He's a member of the House Budget and Ways and Means Committees. Thank you for being here this morning to discuss all these things. I know you just heard some of our reporting from Elena Treen, the president trying to get a peace deal, of course, with Ukraine, but he's lashing out at Ukrainian President Zelensky, saying he hasn't read the deal yet. Meantime, his son Donald Trump Jr. said this about Ukraine, and I want you to take a listen.
Is your hunch that President Trump is going to walk away?
I think he may. What's good about my father and what's unique about my father is you don't know what he's going to do.
It's true.
Let me ask you about that. Is it good that you don't know what he's going to do, and you
It's
heard
a
Don
good
Jr.
thing
say
and a bad
that
thing.
he might walk away? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's certainly true that you never know what Donald Trump will do next. That's creating great uncertainty for so many American businesses and families struggling with the affordability crisis. But as to Ukraine, President Trump's position has really been pretty constant. Whatever Vladimir Putin wants, he wants to provide to him. And there are new reports out that the principal motivation
maybe.
is that Trump and some of his family and friends see great profit potential. They're interested in how much of a buck they can make, not how many lives can be saved in Ukraine. I hope the Europeans will
Well,
be able
remember
to step in and
remember the Russians doesn't care about this. The Americans doesn't care about this. Why would the Americans care about? They're not Americans. Why they could care less that Putin is throwing hundreds of thousands of people at the battlefield. They could care less that the Ukrainians are dying, battle on the battlefield or civilians. Nothing's going to come out of it. So, but they do care about how much money they're going to get.
provide more of the support that Donald Trump is denying Ukraine. The performance that Trump had earlier in the year with Zelensky in the White House is one of the most disgraceful events that I've seen in American history. We need to stand by those who are fighting for freedom, those that are losing civilian lives every day from Putin's war crimes. And Trump's
Nobody is
approach
ever gonna
is absolutely
go after
outrageous.
Putin for war
I do want to
crimes.
ask you just to follow up
What?
on this,
What?
because about a couple of days
Who's
after Donald
who's
Trump
gonna go after him?
was reelected as president, his son put this meme out, and it was directed at Zelensky, and it said, 38 days from losing your allowance. If we can show that, I don't know if people remember that. Do you actually think that Trump will walk away from helping Ukraine? And if so, do you think there's any chance that
Sometimes I don't know. This one it's complicated because it's Trump pretty much already made. Trump already made, I guess, made up his mind, before Thanksgiving. He's like, either you accept this maximalist demand from Russia, or you're gonna lose us as a strategic partner. And of course, Zelensky kind of said that. If I'm looking at this from like the Ukrainians' eyes, or even Europeans' eyes, like it might not be it might not be a bad idea to have the United States take a back seat. Again, like I said, maybe have the United States support in spirit, because in reality, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Yeah. There's a lot more at stake for Europe than it is for United States, and rightfully so, that Europe should take the reins on this. And the only problem why Europeans hasn't taken the rein on this, or taken the lead role, one, because or Trump doesn't allow it. I mean, you look at the last, if I remember, the last, I don't know, 10 discussions, you never hear Europe, has any say in, ever since, even before, the Alaskan summit, even before, now between the new delegation, yeah, I mean, it's not going anywhere. And with all these trips that Zelensky's been going on, one to Ireland, one to Brussels, one to London. These are all just PR moves by him and the Europeans. All of this is just, hey, Europe stands in solidarity. Sure, all that is great. It doesn't matter. What it matters is what Trump was willing to do, and what is Putin willing to do. And whenever those two can get on the same page, um, you know, that might be at the behest of Ukraine. Likewise with Europe. It's just how bad of a gut punch do both of these entities want to take? Yeah.
Congress will try to intervene.
Well, sadly, this Congress is totally a pawn of Donald Trump. They can't seem to stand up to Donald Trump on anything, with the possible exception of the handful that stood up on the Epstein files, and a couple that are questioning this outrageous conduct that he's been involved in murdering survivors in the Caribbean with his purported drug war. At the same time, he pardons someone who was convicted of getting drugs in the United States. I think that Donald Trump
it's pointless.
is determined to help Putin. If he walks away, it won't be much different than what he's done to date, which is to walk away from doing anything to help Ukraine, not sending any American dollars there.
The Americans could care less about that. They're not American. Doesn't matter if they support democracy. I mean, democracy is a joke, to be honest. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, all that YouTube stuff. And yeah, maybe I'll stream tomorrow, or I'll make a couple of videos tomorrow. So peace.